hello. Thank you once again, Pastor, for allowing me the opportunity once again and speak. Just want to kind of take off from where Lady Ann kind of left off here. Opening your eyes. I always like to come up here, and I think I said this before the last time I had the opportunity to speak, and it has a lot to do with learning how to labor. I think the pastor has us on a course right now where we are in the Word, and we are reading the Word, and we are getting sown into. And what gives us the ability to do that, or what the outcome of that is learning to love the labor of reading God's Word. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I say labor because I know me, myself, I'm not an avid reader. I really don't. I was never a person that liked to read. I wasn't one who was always looking for the next book to read and things like that. Pastor's always giving me books. And he likes to give me books, and I like those books. I've learned to love the labor of reading, because in that labor is where God gives you their reward. Yes. Because you are working in His Word. Mm-hmm. Because you don't always understand everything you read when you're reading the Bible. It gets hard sometimes. Sitting there at the table, reading the Word, and you're like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Right. Labor in the Word. Take time. Read it. Study it. The Bible says, study to show thyself approved. Yeah. A workman that needed not be to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. The reward is being able to rightly divide the word of truth by laboring in the Word. Matthew 13:44 says, the kingdom of heaven, and this is the real reason right here. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, right? When a man find it, he hide it again. And then in his joy, went and sold all he had and bought the field that he found the treasure. All right. Again, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. That's what reading the Word is like. That's what digging inside the Word is like. You might not understand on the surface, on the fleshly part. There's some spiritual undertones that are there. Yeah. That if you dig deep enough into, you'll find. Mm-hmm. Amen. There's a song that Pastor introduced a few Sundays ago, and I call it "I Just Want You." I don't know the name of the song, but it's talking about being caught up in God's presence. Yes, yes. And not wanting to leave. But that's where you want to be, in His presence. The way you get there, the way you start that relationship, is getting into His Word. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You get caught up in a conversation with God, because He's putting something in you that He can now reference, and you can reference when He's talking to you. It's the greatest feeling ever. You don't want to leave. You don't want to not be in that mode. You don't want to be in a place where you're not caught up with God. You don't like getting interrupted when you're in that mode. It's in that mode that you'll start to see some of the miracles of God. God will start sharing with you miracles. Not just in what you read in the Bible, but in your own life. You'll see some of the miracles that don't look like miracles to other people. The miracles that change you on the inside. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of miracles, we're going to go to John chapter 2. And we're going to read the first verse through the 11th verse. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, they have no wine. Jesus said unto her, woman, what hath that to do with me? My hour is not yet come. All right. His mother says to the servants, whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there were 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Jesus saith unto them, fill the water pots with water. And they filled them to the brim. And he saith unto them, draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bare it. Now when the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and said unto him, every man at the beginning doth not set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse. But thou hast kept the good wine until now. This is the beginning of miracles that did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifest forth his glory. And his disciples believed on him. Okay. So we have a setting of a wedding. How many of us know how stressful a wedding can be?
Yeah.
Planning a wedding, setting up a wedding. Everybody got to get a tux. You got to wait on brother-in-law or cousin or somebody to get their suit at the last minute. We got shoes to get. They may not match. You know, we worried about if everybody gonna have on the same shoes because hey, we didn't go all at the same time to get the same shoes. We're worried about how we're gonna set the scene, right? How we're gonna set the tables and things like that at the reception. See, my wife, she got an eye for things like that, so she decorated our whole scene, our whole reception hall. So, you know, we had to go look for tablecloths and napkins and things like that. So it can be a very stressful time. Well, I tell you, it was no different for this wedding right here. As a matter of fact, it might have been even more stressful. And so we look at Mary, the mother of Jesus, and she was invited to the wedding. And Jesus was invited to the wedding. But if we remember what happened a chapter before, it says this is the 3rd day. So Jesus just went and he met some folks. So not only is he at the wedding and his mom is at the wedding, but now he got these 5 other people that came with him. He met about 5 other guys gonna bring with him.
Plus 5.
Could you imagine that? You got your wedding plan, you got your guest list all out, you know who's invited. Because Mary's probably one of the family members, considering, you know, she was brought to this trouble of providing wine and saying that the wine was not there. I would consider her something like an auntie, right? That auntie that everybody likes and you know, they put her in charge of getting some of the stuff at the wedding and being in charge of some of the things there. All right. And Jesus, you know, he's the son. Mary's son. That's Mary's boy. Yeah, he can come to the wedding. Then all of a sudden, he got these 5 plus ones. He got 5 plus ones coming behind. Might give you an inclination why they might run out of stuff, right? So you got this scene where they are coming to this wedding and they run out of wine at the wedding. So Mary comes to her son, Jesus. And see, back in that time, there was a passing on or something like that. So it doesn't speak of Joseph, Jesus' father, stepfather. It doesn't speak of him at all. And so it would be presumed that he had passed away at this time. So because he passed away, that means Mary's going to depend on Jesus. She's going to run to him when it comes to things. If there's something that needs to be done, she'll come to him first. And so with that, she comes to Jesus and she says to him, we run out of wine. We don't have any more. It's funny the response. Because he said to her, woman, first of all, I would never do that to my mom, right? I mean, just think about, you know, our community, you know, we don't get to talk to our moms like that. That's something that always stood out to me. I would never look at my mom, and just because things have changed between us, because there's a relationship change that's what they're speaking of it. And so I just speak to her and say, woman, see, I can't even look at Mama Joan and say that and feel comfortable. But what it signified was a change in their relationship. Because from this point on, after Jesus was, after the Holy Spirit descended on him, so he never replied to his mom as calling her mother again. We even have a picture of Jesus sitting at a table, and the disciples saying, "Your mother's outside." He totally ignored it and said, "Who is my mother and who is my brothers, except for those who believe with me?" So their relationship changed. But the thing that was more powerful to me was her response. She never talked to him after that. She never addressed the fact that he said, "Woman, this is not the time." All right. She turned to the servants and she said, "Whatever he tells you to do, do it." All right. She said, "Don't worry about anything." She didn't say, he might tell you to do something. She didn't say, listen to what he said. He's going to give you some instructions. She just said, "Whatever he tells you to do, do it." So I'm coming to you from a place of just do it. When you're in the presence of God, when you're in the presence of Jesus, when you're in a place where you're caught up, when you're in a place that you're getting instruction from him, just do it. There's not a lot to be said about how we ask for understanding sometimes. And how these guys just went ahead and did what Jesus said. It comes from, I often think about sometimes what the Bible doesn't say, what it doesn't speak about. I talked to my brother Omar about this when we were talking about our meeting up and talking about our 21 days Gospel of John. And I envisioned me and Omar standing beside each other and being two of those servants and getting the instruction from Jesus to say, just go put water in there and then go take it to the governor of the feast. I imagine myself with Omar there because I said, "Omar, I'll be standing beside you," and I'd be like, "You gonna take yours first?" I mean, I know he said, put the water in there, and he sounds sure. But maybe he should take it up there. He's the one who did it, right? Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine being in that moment, all right, and being asked to go take that to the governor of the feast. But see, they didn't ask for understanding there. That's what boggles my mind, because I would have been like, well, how is this going to happen? How are we going to take this up there? We didn't see a change. He basically changed that water quicker than a Thanos snap, for those in my Marvel character, right? Right. He poured the water in there, and then he said, "Take it." We didn't see any change. See, sometimes it's not all about what we understand. Mm-hmm. It's not about us having to have all the knowledge of how something changed when the instructions are coming from God. Sometimes it's better that we don't understand. Because understanding sometimes can delay what happens. That's good. Can you imagine God talking to those guys and make them taking a stance and they say, "Well, I need you to tell me how this happened before I take this to the governor of the feast. You're going to tell me to take something from him and you're telling me to do it now. You change the water, but you want me to go present it. You want me to take the credit." So I know a lot of people that will be like, no, well, hold on, wait a minute. You want me to go take it up there? But let's think about this. Let's think about it from this standpoint. What actually had to happen in that water? Jesus himself changed that water. If he took the time to tell them how he took atoms and molecules and structures and covalent bonds and changed that around to turn that water into wine, mm-hmm. Those guys will still be sitting here waiting on that to learn that lesson here today. All right. They wouldn't have understood it anyway. That's a good point. How he made that water into wine. That being said, they would have missed the opportunity of the blessing that was there to give the wine to the whole wedding. Mm-hmm. See, those weddings back then lasted a week. They lasted a long time. It wasn't just a one-day event. So him stopping to explain to them would have taken that ability away for them to provide the wedding, to the wine to the people at the wedding. They would have never received it. Back in those days, if you ran out of food, if you ran out of wine at the wedding, the people at the wedding had the opportunity to take you to the law. Could you imagine that? I'm glad we don't live back in those times. I think we ran out of food at my wedding because we didn't even get to eat. We ran out of food. But imagine somebody being able to take you to the law because you didn't have enough food, you didn't have enough wine. So this is why it was so important. See, Jesus wasn't just doing some parlor trick. He was actually saving the reputation of his family, saving the reputation of his mom, who was in charge of parts of that wedding. And so we don't want to get into the holdup or the snag of trying to understand what God is always trying to do, or what he's trying to do within us. See, it reminds me of the story of Daniel. Y'all know the story of Daniel? Daniel LaRusso? The Karate Kid? Y'all know the Karate Kid. Y'all know Daniel LaRusso, the Mr. Miyagi. Yeah. See, I looked at that movie and I started realizing sometimes you have to listen to the person who you're learning from, and they might understand your lack of understanding. They might understand what you don't understand. So think about Daniel. He had 3 weeks to learn how to fight in a tournament against guys who had years of experience of karate. You know, Lady Ann talked about getting your nunchucks out and being able to fight. Daniel didn't have a clue. Daniel was on TV trying to learn how to do karate kicks. Y'all remember? He said here, 1, 1. He kept kicking, looking at TV, messed around and kicked over something on the table. He had no idea. Mr. Miyagi had 3 weeks to train him to be good enough to compete against these guys who've been doing karate for years. But the one thing Mr. Miyagi told Daniel is, before he trained him, he said, Daniel, I'll train you. He got tired of looking at Daniel coming in the same way he came in, defeated, beat up. He said, I'll train you. He said, but one thing. He said, no question. No question. He said, I'll train you. One condition. No question. So he agreed. So then he went through the process of training Daniel. Y'all remember the difference, huh? You know, if you know some of the things he did with Daniel, drop some in the comments in there. So I'm gonna try to go through again. So the first one, if I remember, was wax on. Yeah. Wax on. Wax on. Wax on. Wax off. And then he took him through another one, you know. It was sand the floor. So then Daniel had to get down on the floor and he sand the floor. And then he sand the floor. And then he took Daniel through sanding the floor, and the deck was polished and it was good, and he'd come out and, you know, slide his feet on and make sure he didn't get any splinters. And then he took him to painting the house. So the painting the house was side to side. It was side to side. He had a side to side on the house. And then Daniel would think he was finished, and then he showed him the fence all the way around the Miyagi dojo. Yeah. So he said, Daniel, paint the fence. So then you had to paint the fence. He painted the fence. And so Daniel is like, he gets to a point where he breaks. He's painted the fence, he sanded the floor, he waxed on and he waxed off. And he got mad at Mr. Miyagi, and he goes up to him and he's like, look, I'm tired of this. You got me doing all these chores. But you're not teaching me any karate. See, one thing that Mr. Miyagi understood about Daniel was Daniel had a wrong understanding of what it meant to do karate. See, Daniel thought karate was all about attacking and being on the offense. See, Daniel didn't realize he had no problem with offense. On the beach when he was with the guys, he started the fight. He hit the guy, right? He had a problem with offense. He had no problem with attacking. When I thought it was a brilliant idea during the Halloween party, he dressed as a shower right? So nobody could see him because he didn't want to get beat up no more. But then he picked the fight. He had a problem with offense. The problem was after he initiated the offense, he got his butt kicked. He would always get his butt kicked, especially after that time. That was the worst time. Mr. Miyagi saw his problem wasn't his offense, it was his defense. So what did he do? He taught him how to defend with all those things he thought was true. He didn't understand what Mr. Miyagi was trying to teach him until he broke. And then he had to reveal to him, look, I'm teaching you how to defend yourself because you keep getting beat up and I'm tired of seeing you come over here with black eyes, limping, can't move, and then you crying to me to teach you karate. See, Mr. Miyagi understood that if I tell him right now how I'm going to train him, if I tell him right now I'm going to show him how to be defensive minded, he'll walk away from me. All right. He won't stay around long enough to listen. So I have to put a condition on this to where he asks me no questions, so I can get the training in, so I can get him to where I need him to be. Because defense wins the tournament. Defense, like we say, wins games. So he understood that Daniel had a different mindset than his. It was contrary to his understanding. So we have that same fight sometimes with God. He's trying to take us from one place to the next, and he needed us to act right now. Sometimes you just have to do. You have to do what God is asking you to do. You have to do what God has instructed you to do. All right. So it's through sometimes not understanding that God will get you to the place you need to be. Think about Abraham. Abraham didn't understand what God was going to do. Mm-hmm. Abraham was sitting in his house in Ur, chilling with his parents. And God just tells him, go and leave the place where you are. Leave your mother and father. Leave everything you know. Mm-hmm. Just do it. Just go out to the place that I'll show you. What if he'd have told Abraham everything that was going to happen there? What if he told him that, I'm going to give you a son, but I'm going to take you on a mountain to kill him? What if he told him that, hey, you're going to go to Egypt and you're going to confront the king and he's going to love your wife? So much to the fact that, hey, you're a little scared. You're going to give your wife to this king. You think Abraham would have went on that? I mean, I might would have stopped where he told me about the son. You imagine taking your son to a mountaintop and raising a knife to get ready to slay him? Mm-hmm. He doesn't always give you the understanding right there. There's nothing wrong with getting understanding. I don't want that to be misconstrued here. There's nothing wrong with getting understanding. God will give you understanding in time. But when God gives you instructions, there may not be time for you to ask him questions about what he's asking you to do. Same thing, if God told Abraham right there in the moment what he was going to do with him, Abraham would still probably be considering it right now to this day. He'd have missed the blessing. He'd have missed the opportunity for his seed to be us. All right, good word. So it's a wonder how, that our understanding is always, we always want that understanding. We always want to receive that understanding. But I want to point to something else here about this story. And even though he went through that, right? It's another thing about the way Mary took the instruction, or how she turned to Jesus. So why did he even listen to what she said? Because it wasn't about the relationship that they had anymore, right? The relationship had changed from him and his mom. The thing about Jesus is he had a prejudice when it came to responding to faith. When he saw faith, he responded. He didn't stay in the same place. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, your application of faith could change Jesus' timeline. It would change what he already intended to do, what his plans were to do. And you say, hey, what? That doesn't make sense. How are you going to change Jesus' timeline? Well, just think about it here. What did he say to Mary? He said, woman, why are you bringing this to me? Because this is not my time. I'm not supposed to be doing miracles right now. This is not my time to bring all this heat on me. Because as he's doing miracles, people are noticing. And people want to know who he is, and they want to question him. He said, this is not my time. But he responded to her because of her faith. Remember, she never directed it right back to him. Her faith was, do whatever he tells you to do. That was her response. And so then his response was to talk to the guys. He responded to her faith. And you know that he responded to her faith because you can always find trends with God. You know where you find it? Right back in the Word. If you want to find out if God did something or how he did it or why he did it, your answer is right back in the Word. He did the same thing with the centurion. He changed his course. You're like, well, I don't remember that part of the story. Let's think about it. Centurion came to Jesus and he said he wanted his daughter healed. And the centurion said, and Jesus said, well, let's go. Let's start this journey so we can go to your daughter and get her healed. See, he had a plan to go and heal the daughter. The centurion says, hold on, wait a minute. I don't need you to go. He said, just speak the word only. He said, I too am a man that when I command things to happen, they happen. He said, I see how this is done, so just speak the word only. And Jesus turns and he's like, man, I don't got to go on a trip. He changed the plans. He changed the course of action because of his faith. He said, only, just speak the word only. There's another story where there's a lady who had an issue of blood. And she pressed through a crowd. And she said this line. She kept saying this. If I could only touch the hem of his garment. When she touched him, he wasn't looking for her. He wasn't aware of her. He didn't know she was coming. She changed the rest. She made an interruption in what he was doing, where he was going. He was on his way somewhere else. She touched him, and he says, who touched me? You ever been to the doctor, and they took that little hammer out, and they hit you on the knee? And your knee kick out like that? It was a reflex reaction to her faith. Wouldn't that be awesome to have that type of reaction to God's faith, to God's power? That by when you extend your faith, it hits like a reflex. It just kicks in. He said, who touched me? It was a reflex. That's how sensitive God is. That's how sensitive Jesus is to our faith. She said, if only. If only. The centurion said, only, if you only. And I want to ask you, what will you attach your only to? What will your only be? If only I love a little bit harder. If only I forgive when I'm supposed to forgive. If only I bless when I'm supposed to bless. What will you attach your faith to? What will your only be? There's one more lady there. And I like to say this lady, she was like that lady who, you ever had an office party and it was just for your department. But you always had people trying to get in to the office party from a different department. And they always sneak it in. They be the first one to be asked, well, who made the potato salad? You ain't even supposed to be here. This was that lady. She was a lady from Canada. And she had a daughter that needed healing. And Jesus was walking around all the offices, the whole department of the Israelites. He was walking around in the Israelite department. And he was sending out blessings. They had their office party. And they got to a point where they had come to rest. And this lady had seen them all giving all these gifts and all these blessings to people. And they finally get to a place to rest. And guess who's there looking for some blessing? This lady from another department. She ain't got no business being there. She ain't in the Jewish department. She in the Gentile department. She don't belong. But yet she comes to Jesus. And it's amazing how she got there. Because you got disciples there, right? They're supposed to be protecting him. Now, I'm kind of like shaky on the security here. What's going on that this old lady comes and gets next to Jesus? The audacity of her. How dare she? She had a need. So she goes to Jesus and she says, she goes to Jesus and she says, my daughter, I know you can heal her. And he downright insults her. First he says, I'm not supposed to give the meat to the dogs. You're not of the house of Israel. And she still says, hey, I still want a blessing. I don't care what you call me. I still want a blessing. I still want some potato salad. It was her faith that changed the course of what was supposed to happen. She just did it. She responded to her faith and what she believed and what she saw, and she went and did it. Amen. And Jesus blessed her daughter, and healed her daughter. Amen. It's amazing that what Jesus would do and the miracles that he'll do. And so I think it's really amazing that your faith, and God honors that faith, because that faith changes things inside. Mm-hmm. Just like it changed what was going on in those water pots. Think about it. Those guys are sitting there, they looking down that water pot and they say, hey, I don't know, but there's got to be a change. You see, something about vessels. God does something with vessels, right? And I think about the vessels that they had, right? So the vessels that they had were used for purification. Now, I could tell you what I read about this purification process. And see, some people say it was just the washing of the hands and feet. And it probably was it that way. But it said that there were a few firkins in the vessel already. Firkins are a measurement of liquid. And so there were about 9 gallons of water already in it. They added more water and filled it to the brim, right? Kind of lets you know there was no room to do anything else. There was no room for other ingredients because he filled it all the way up. But they used it for washing hands. Some people even say their purification was stepping in and washing their whole body. So can you imagine the filth that was in that pot? The dirt? Now this is for everybody at the feet. There were 6 pots. But everybody in that community got to come to the wedding. And they wash their hands and wash their feet. And so there was already dirty water in there. I don't know if they went and put clean water in, but there was already dirty water there. So Jesus changed what was on the inside of those pots. And I encourage you to see yourself as a vessel. Because there are a lot of people who come and wash their hands in your pot. There's a lot of people who wash their feet in your pot. They murky the inside. There's a lot of things that we do that murky the inside of our own pot. That dirty that water. That make it so nasty, so dark, so filthy, so disgusting. Yes. But think about how quick Jesus can turn that into something that's good, and something that's useful, and something, when given to everybody else, is the best they ever had. And it's coming out of you. It's coming out of you. God will take the nastiness in you, the darkness in you, and change it so that when you pour out, He'll fill you up to the brim so that others can take from you. And it'd be good. See, that's what he did on the day of Pentecost. When he gave people the Holy Spirit. He put something on the inside of us that when we share it to other people, it's so good. He gave us power on the inside to be good, to be the best that anybody's ever seen. See, somebody will say to you, yeah, I remember when I first met you, you was all right. You was pretty cool. But now that you found that Jesus, man, I'm getting the best out of you than I did at the beginning. Some people try to show who they are when you first meet them, right? Some people try to give you their best when you first meet them, but man, I know, look at you now. I come around you and I get blessed. When I talk to you, my life changes. When I deal with you, things start changing in my life. Man, how do I get some of that? How do I get those things inside me to change? So when it comes to understanding God, to being in the presence of God, He's giving you instructions to do, just do it. You ask Him, what would God want me to do? What would He want me to do that I might not understand? How about loving your enemies? How about loving those people who seem to be unlovable? How about forgiving? Forgiving people who seem to be unforgivable. The people who hurt you, people who persecute you and use you. Because we don't understand that. We don't understand that principle. How can I love somebody who is showing themselves not worthy of love? Who don't show they love me? How can I forgive somebody who hurt me? That stuff don't make sense in our world. I tell you it don't make sense because Facebook, you can attest to it. How many Facebook proverbs do you see on Facebook all the time? Yeah, if somebody do you wrong, you make sure you keep them out of your life, you keep them far from you, right? You know those Facebook proverbs. Somebody don't love you, then yeah, just turn your back on them. Walk away from them, right? See, God will give us things that sometimes we don't understand. The principle of giving. How do I give to something that I'm not giving something right back? Give something right back from? Mm-hmm. How do I give my money to the church when I got a bill over here? We don't understand that principle. Until you get the understanding, just do it. Mm. Just do what God is asking you to do. The revelation will come. The understanding will come. But what you don't want to do is waste time and miss your blessing. You don't want to waste your time on understanding and miss your blessing. So I encourage you. Number one, stay in your word. Learn to love the labor of reading your word. All right. Because in that, you will get miracles from God. You will understand God. And God will be able to use you because you'll get caught up in the moment of just talking and communicating. Don't always try to understand what God is asking you to do right up front. If you're in the presence of the King, if you're in the presence of God, just do it. The understanding will come. And then, lastly, understand that when God fixes something, it's permanent. When Jesus filled those pots, it was enough to last the rest of that week. They didn't have another need for wine at the wedding. When Jesus fixes something, it's good. It's finished. He had a good example of that when God, at the very beginning, was creating the world. When God said, "Let there be light," it was finished. We got light to this day. When God said, "Let there be the skies and the clouds," we still got clouds to this day. I believe the same thing when Jesus was healing people. When He healed somebody or something, they were healed of that thing. It's like at this wedding, when He filled those pots and gave that water and turned it to wine, they didn't have another need for wine. God fixes things permanently. He fixes things. He eliminates the problem. He doesn't just fix the problem, solve the problem. He eliminates the need for that, whatever he provided for. There's no more need for it. So, in the presence of God, just do it. Amen?
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, for another opportunity. Thank you, First Lady, for your encouragement as well. Thank you, my lovely wife, for all that you do. Thank you for praying for me.
Amen.